morning, everybody. My name is Darin Maier. I'm the debate director of forensics at St. Andrew's Episcopal School. This is one of the programs we have in the upper school principally. We have a middle school team as well that competes. But what I want to do before we begin is to bring in one of my students, Nikhil Aurora, and what he's going to be doing in about 30 minutes time is he's going to be talking about a current events question that he will be seeing for the first time right now. So Nikhil, if you'll come in here, please. Over to my side, we've got an envelope here. Nikhil's going to open that envelope. He has no advanced knowledge of the questions that are in there. I'm sure he wishes he did. He's going to draw 3 of them out, and what he's going to do is he's going to select one of those, and then he will depart for 30 minutes to prepare a speech not more than 7 minutes in length that will seek to answer the questions. And Nikhil's opening the envelope now, pulling 3 questions out, and deciding which of these 3 that he is going to take. He's looking at the first question right now, looking at the second one, looking at the third, and Phil, if you come over here, tell him which question you're going to take.
Will Ebola become a mass epidemic?
Okay, so go back over there for 30 minutes. One of the things about speech and debate is that you see a lot of interpretations of what this event is in the media, in movies, television, and all that, and a lot of it really isn't anywhere near what actually happens in real life. Everybody assumes that it's all one thing, or everybody assumes it's all another thing, and in reality, it encompasses a lot of different types of events. Within speech and debate in Mississippi, there are 15 different events that students compete in. There are 3 specific types of debate, each of which has sort of their own unique features to it. You have policy debate, where you have one topic for the entire year, which proposes whether or not the government should take action in a particular realm of public policy, in this case, oceans. You have Lincoln-Douglas debate, which deals with more questions of values and ethics, and a topic there that changes every 2 months. And then public forum debate, which generally has a topic of current interest, with the topic changing every month, and that forum debate is really geared towards individuals who do not have particular experience in debate to be able to understand and follow the debate and to make an intelligent decision about who won or lost the round. And then within public speaking events, you have a lot of events related to the more dramatic elements of performance, dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, duet acting, duo interpretation. Then you have events like original oratory, where a student writes a speech, usually following a model where they identify a problem, examine the reasons behind the problem, and then propose a solution to that problem. And things like extemporaneous speaking, where you have events of current nature, where students prepare research in advance, prepare files, and then they draw these questions out, and what they do is they then have 30 minutes to prepare that 7-minute speech to answer those questions. Additionally, we have other events such as declamation, which in Mississippi and in most places is contested only by freshmen and sophomores, where you take a speech that has been previously presented, you memorize it, and then what happens is that you perform that speech. And so what I want to do right now is to bring in one of our other students, Randy Maier, who is a sophomore at St. Andrews, and she is going to perform her declamation. So Asada, if you'll come forward.
Life is about opportunities, creating them and embracing them. And for me, that was the Olympic dream. That's what defined me. That was my bliss. As a cross-country skier and member of the Australian ski team, I was on a training bike ride with my fellow teammates. And as we made our way up the spectacular blue mountains of West Sydney, life was good. And when we got to the part of the ride that I loved, and that was the hills, I looked up to see the sun shining in my face. And then everything went black. I had been hit by a speeding utility truck with only 10 minutes left in the ride. My body was airlifted from the scene because my whole right side was ripped open. My head was cut open, exposing the skull underneath, and I had massive blood loss. I had lost about 5 liters of blood, which is all anyone my size can actually hold, I was having a really bad day. Now, the philosopher Lao Tzu once said, it's not until we let go of who we are that we become who we might be. In October of 2012, Janine Sheppard delivers a TED Talk describing the journey she went on to rebuild her life. And it was not until she let go of who she thought she was that she was able to embrace the life that was waiting for her. And she learned ultimately that a broken body is not a broken person. Now, I drifted between two dimensions. I had an awareness of being in my body, but also out of my body, watching from above, as if this was happening to someone else. Why would I want to go back to a body that was so broken? The doctors were really excited when I woke up in intensive care because at this stage I had a little movement in one of my big toes, and I thought, great, because I'm going to the Olympics. I had no idea this was the kind of thing that happened to someone else, not me. Surely. But then one of the doctors came over to me and she said, Janine, the operation was a success, but the damage is permanent. You're going to have to rethink everything you've ever done in your life because you're never going to be able to do again what you did before. I tried to grasp what she was saying. I was an athlete. That's all I knew. That's all I'd done. And if I couldn't do that, then what could I do? And then I thought, if I couldn't do that, then who was I? I remember one night in the spinal ward, one of the nurses came in with a huge pile of straws, and he set it on each one of us, and he told us to start threading them together. So we did. And when we finished, he went around the entire ward and looped all the straws together. And he said, right, hold on. Now we're all connected. And as we sat there holding on, breathing as one, we realized that we weren't on this journey alone. Now, after six months, it was time for me to leave the hospital, and the head nurse came over to me and she said, Janine, I want you to be ready because when you go home, something's going to happen. You're going to get depressed. And I thought, not me. Not Janine the machine. And she said, yes, you are, because, see, it happens to everyone. You're going to get home and you're going to realize how different life is. And I did get depressed. I was at home in my wheelchair, covered in my plaster body cast. I had lost so much weight in the hospital. I was now only about 80 pounds, and I wanted to give up. I wanted to put on my running shoes and run out the door. I wanted my life back, and I wanted my body back. I wondered, would life ever be good again? And I thought, how could it? Because I'd lost everything I'd ever valued. Everything I'd ever worked for was gone. And the question I asked was, why me? Why me? And then I remembered my friends that were still in the spinal ward. And I realized that this wasn't just my life. This was life itself. This wasn't just my pain. This was everybody's pain. And I realized that I had a choice. I could keep fighting this, or I could learn to accept not only my body, but the circumstances of my life. And then I stopped asking why me, and I started to ask, why not me? Maybe rock bottom is the perfect place to start. Now, I had never thought of myself as a creative person. I was an athlete. My body was a machine. But I was about to embark on the most creative journey any of us could ever do. That of rebuilding a life. As I sat at home in my wheelchair, I looked above and I saw an airplane flying overhead. Now I looked up and I thought, that's it. If I can't walk, then I might as well fly. So I called up the local flying school and I said, hi, I'd like to come out for an appointment. A few weeks later, my mom and my friend Chris drove me out to the flying school because I can't drive, and I'm holding up onto the counter because I can't stand, and I say, hi, I'm here for my flying lesson. Now, I did not look like the ideal flying school student, and they took one look at me, and they run out in the back to draw straws, and finally, they send out this guy, And the instructor takes me out to the airplane, starts it up, and says, "Would you like to have a go at taxiing?" Now that's when you use your feet to control the pedals, and I say, "No, I can't really use my feet, but I can use my hands." And he said, "Oh, okay." So he takes me off, and we're over the training area, and he says, "Do you see those mountains over there?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I want you to take the controls and fly towards those mountains." And as I look up, I realized that he was pointing at the Blue Mountains, where this journey had begun. And I took the controls, and I was flying the plane, and I was a long, long way from that spinal ward. And I realized right then that I was going to be a pilot. I was going to be a pilot. Now, I never knew how in the world I was ever going to pass a medical, but that was for another time. Right now, I had a dream. And I spent every day learning how to walk again. I went from 2 people holding me up to just 1 person holding me up, to moving around the house, holding on to the furniture as long as it wasn't too far apart, to sliding along the walls with my mom behind me, wiping away my fingerprints. And eventually, and miraculously, I passed my pilot's medical, and that was my green light to fly. And I spent every moment that I could out there at that flying school, way out of my comfort zone. And eventually, I got my private pilot's license. And then I learned to navigate, and I flew my friends around Australia. And then I learned to fly a plane with 2 engines, and I got my twin engines rating. And then I learned to fly in bad weather as well as fine weather, and I got my instrumentals rating. And then I got my instructor's rating, and I found myself at that very same flight school teaching other people how to fly. Just under 18 months after leaving the spinal ward. And then I said, why stop there? Why not learn how to fly upside down? So I did, and I became an aerobatics training instructor. And then I realized that although my body was limited, it was my spirit that was unstoppable. I know that I'm not my body, and I know that you're not yours. And after that, what does it matter what we look like, or where we come from, or what we do for a living? What matters is that we continue to fan the flame of humanity by living out our lives as the ultimate creative expression of who we are. Because we're all connected by millions and millions of these little straws, and it's time we join those up and hang on. Because if we're to move towards our collective bliss, it's time we shed our focus on the physical and start embracing the true virtues of our hearts. So if you'll join me, raise your straws. Thank you.
I think that's it for a few seconds. Does anyone have any questions for Asada about this particular piece?
Was that presented to you as a choice? Is there a select choice?
Tell us how you ended up finding this piece.
Well, in the class, we have this Dropbox file full of declamation speeches that we can choose from. And so we're told to go through there and find a piece that we like. Or if we know of a piece, we can find that and present it to one of the coaches. And that file was in the Dropbox file, and I really liked it, and it seemed like something that I could do, and I understood what she was going through and could really bring it to life. So I decided to do that piece. Yes. Now, it was originally like 20 minutes long, so we have to cut it because in competition it can only be 10 minutes long. So there were a few pieces of that, her original speech, that wasn't in what I just did.
What was it about this particular piece that spoke to you then?
Well, the journey that she went on, because a lot of people, like professional sports players, they'll get hurt and you think their life is over, like, because that's literally all they've done all their life from when they were little. They grew up playing sports, and then when you become an adult playing sports, that's really your life because that's all you've done. And so to be able to come up from getting injured and to rebuild your life was very inspirational to me. And so I thought I would share this with other people, and especially parents who have children. Your child gets hurt and they think it's all over, but it's really an inspirational piece to teach you how you have to keep going and let go of who you think you should be and become who you really are.
Have you performed it at tournaments?
Yes, the one competition that I have performed in, I won first place. Yes.
Asada, what do you like about speech and debate?
What do I like about speech and debate? Well, my speech and debate family, we're all really close, and the coaches are really close with all the students. They're not like scary adults. But I like speech and debate because it's really for everyone. Like Mr. Maier said, there are all these different events that you can do. Like, I'm not a big debate person, and when you think speech and debate, you think two people rashing it out, yelling at each other, debating over this topic. That's what I originally thought, until I saw the speech side of speech and debate and the interpretation of literature and all those different kinds of events in speech and debate. So I like it because it's a wide range no matter what you want to do, because I'm more of a theater person, and so I like to interpret different pieces, and to be able to compete with my interpretations, I really like that. And then my friends who are more debate people can go and debate their topics. So that's what I like about speech and debate. Any more questions?
You did a beautiful job.
Thank you so much.
That's beautiful.
Is that all?
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
So to give you a little bit of information about how this activity works, at least in the state of Mississippi, over the course of the year, we have a number of tournaments, and when we say in forensics or speech and debate that we really do have the longest season in the year, we're not kidding. Our season began this year with our first tournament at Petal High School the weekend after Labor Day, and we will have students competing all the way through to the National Speech and Debate Association National Tournament, which will take place in Dallas, Texas in mid-June. Students come to us for a number of reasons. They come to us because they think it's going to help their college application. They think it's a way to get their fine arts credit taken care of at St. Andrews. And so they come to us initially for a lot of different reasons. But the reason why I think a lot of the kids who stay with the program, and we do retain the vast majority of the kids who start the program, is because they just find it to be fun. And even if they don't find the event that we initially think they should be doing to be fun, invariably they find something that really speaks to them. And I tell this story one time about one of the best debaters we ever had at St. Andrews, and he initially started off doing humorous interpretation, and it was just one of these things that we needed him to fill out a team that was going to a tournament. And I said to the student, I said, Chad, I want you to go compete in policy debate one time. If you go do it this one time, I will never ask you to do it again for the remainder of your 4 years here. And he goes, and he comes back, and he says, Mr. Mark, this is my event, this is what I want to do. And ended up doing very well in competition, ended up actually getting a partial scholarship to Stanford University, debated for them, and is actually now using some of those skills. He's actually now working in the oil industry. So these skills end up being lifelong skills. But I also tell people that for me, it's not the students who win all the awards, and it's not the students who get the big mountains of trophies that are the most gratifying. It's the students who, for speech and debate, it becomes really a transformative experience. We had another student who also was principally a debater and an extemporaneous speaker, and really at St. Andrews would not have been considered one of the leading academic lights. He was a BC student. And so what speech and debate did for him was it gave him a venue outside of the school where he could go and represent St. Andrews and be thought of as an intellectual. Well, he graduated in 2004. He then went to Ole Miss, and he began to get involved with the William Winter Institute for Racial Reconciliation. Worked there as a student all 4 years. Was so impressive that they then hired him on to permanent staff after he graduated, and he did a lot of work with the high school programs and the racial initiatives that they were doing in their summer programs. And then he is now actually the director of the Emmett Till Interpretive Center that they are working on in the Delta. So it's students like that where you see that this just really opens up a whole range of ideas and possibilities for them that they might not otherwise have thought of, that really makes this the most rewarding. But in terms of tournaments, the way that a tournament basically works is you have debate events in Mississippi that take place on Friday during the afternoon and evening. And with the elimination rounds taking place on Saturday morning, and then on Saturday, they have the speech events. This is where you would have the extemporaneous speaking, the prose reading, the poetry readings, duet acting, original oratory, and all of that. And then they compete those in a couple of rounds, and then what they do is they have a semifinal round for the top 12 or 14 competitors, and then a final round for the top 6, and then we have an award ceremony, and then we head on back to our respective locations. But one of the things about this activity, particularly in Mississippi, you know, Mississippi gets such a bad reputation for a lot of things that it's sort of inspiring to see that this is actually something that Mississippi does really pretty well compared to not just our neighbors, but that we have students who are competitive nationally. In addition to the students, and there's a flyer that we got here, in addition to the students that we've had at St. Andrews that have made deep runs in national tournaments, last year there was a team from Hattiesburg High School that placed 3rd in the nation at the National Speech and Debate Association National Tournament, which was held this past June in Kansas City. Had another student from Madison Central who was at the Harvard Tournament. Out of about 300 students in original oratory, she placed 6th overall. And these sorts of things. And people say, well, why, you know, when you hear all the sort of stereotypes about Mississippi, what makes Mississippi so good at this relative to other states? And I say part of it is because, first off, I think Mississippians, in sort of my observation, being married to a native Mississippian, really have an appreciation for the dramatic and really have an appreciation for being passionate about things. And I think that really, especially in terms of the literary-oriented events, gives them a little bit of a leg up. But the other thing is that, unlike some other states, we actually have a coaching community where the vast majority of the coaches who participate in this activity actually get along. And you can't say that about every single district or every single state where this takes place. You have some districts where the coaches just genuinely don't like each other. And even when we have differences, we're able to use the skills that we're supposed to have been teaching our students to be rational and be objective, and to really say that what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide the best experience for students in the state of Mississippi, and that we really do work towards those goals. So at this point, I want to sort of open the floor up to any questions that people have about how this activity is practiced, or any other questions that you may have. We have another student who will be coming on in just a few minutes, and he will be doing the extemporaneous speech that you saw the question that he drew in a few minutes. So are there any questions right now?
Darin, when we host
Yes.
events here, anybody, like our parent community, can apply to be a judge?
Absolutely. In fact, in about a week or so, what will happen is that an email, it'll actually be attached to the Saints newsletter, and there is an opportunity for parents to serve as judges, an opportunity for recent alumni to serve as judges as well. And our tournament this year is going to be on the 24th and 25th of October. And we're going to have all our debate events on Friday night, with the exception of the last preliminary round of debate, which will be Saturday morning. And then our elimination rounds will be through Saturday afternoon, and the speech events will be on Saturday. And all we ask is that if a parent is able to be open-minded and they care about children, and we think that the vast majority of them would, that they have the most essential skills that are necessary to be a decent judge. And we are willing to train those people. So when you see that come out, if you're interested in doing that, there'll be a form that you can fill out. You can fax it in, you can email it in, and we'll be happy to work with you for that end. So yeah, that's one way that if you have students in the lower school and you are wanting to participate in this activity, this is a way to do that. In fact, many of the judges that we have used at national tournaments, who are parent judges, can trace their involvement back to when their students were in lower school. Other questions?
What age do they normally become involved?
The question you didn't hear was when students normally become involved in speech debate. The way the program works at St. Andrews is in 7th grade they have the opportunity to select speech and debate as their fine art elective. They typically do that fine art elective for 2 years, unless there's a compelling reason for them to change. There aren't as many competition opportunities because there's not as many middle school tournaments, but traditionally students begin in the 9th grade. They have a fine arts requirement that they have to fulfill, which is 3 years. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same activity all 3 years, but most students tend to stay with the same thing for all 3 years. And so most of our students begin actively competing in 9th grade. We do have some students who do a year of something else and then actually come to speech and debate as sophomores, or actually last year we had a couple who came for the first time as juniors. And so they will traditionally begin in 9th grade, but we have had students who have been successful that have not started until 10th or 11th grade. So at this point we're going to ask Nikhil to come on in. Nikhil, I think we're ready. And so Nikhil has been working on this speech for 30 minutes. You will see that he'll have no note card up here. He'll have no notes. Everything will be based on information that he has divined from files that we have developed over the course of the year to prepare for this. And so he will be coming in here a little bit to deliver the speech on the question, is Ebola about to become a mass epidemic, or will Ebola become a mass epidemic? So.
Our country is currently facing a rash of epidemics. For one, generic pop singers are sprouting up like trees everywhere. But when we look at something like Ebola, we can see that unlike these pop singers, it's not going to be developing into an epidemic for 3 major reasons. First, we can see that the United States is taking a strong stance on Ebola in the status quo. Second, we can see that the United States involvement is going to be setting an example for other countries as well. And third, and finally, we can see the containment of Ebola in the status quo has succeeded. So let's go to my first point, where we can see that the United States has put a large emphasis on stopping Ebola. According to CNN in 2014, President Obama has made Ebola one of his highest priorities right now, and he's putting a lot of resources towards Africa to help stop the crisis. According to CBS in 2014, 100 tons of equipment were recently shipped to Africa to help stop this issue. And more resources are continuing to be shipped. It clearly indicates that the United States is not taking this issue lightly, but it's a global issue that the United States wants to contain and stop. In addition, the United States is one of the most technologically advanced countries in the entire world. And as we continue to exercise our leadership and use our resources to help stop this issue, we're only going to see it degenerate more and more rather than grow into a mass epidemic. But going into my second point, we can see that United States involvement is also going to be encouraging other countries to come into the picture. Also, according to CNN in 2014, the United States has called an emergency meeting of countries around the world to help stop this issue. And countries like China have set up emergency medical facilities in Africa following in the steps of the United States to help contain this issue. And as the United States continues to take steps forward, we're going to be seeing countries like England, France, Spain, Canada continue to take more steps to solve a global issue. Obama has made this a priority of the international community, not just within Africa. And as the international community puts a greater focus on it, we're going to be able to see this issue diminish even more. But third, and finally, we can see the containment of Ebola in the status quo has succeeded. According to the New York Times in 2014, Ebola has largely been concentrated in Nigeria and Senegal. And as a result, we're going to be able to see this issue reduce more and more. We've also seen that 80% of targeted homes have been successful in, one, making sure that they're sterile and clean, but also that they're not at risk of getting this Ebola virus. And this number is only going to be increasing. We can also see that as this Ebola outbreak continues to decrease, we're going to continue to be more successful and only take positive steps forward rather than taking steps back. So, in conclusion, when asked the question, is Ebola going to become an epidemic? The answer is most definitely no. We reviewed how the United States is taking a strong stance on Ebola, but also how the United States involvement brings in other countries. And finally, how containment of Ebola has succeeded right now. Ebola is not going to be becoming an epidemic anytime soon. But we do face epidemics of these generic pop singers or these other crises spreading throughout our nation. And this is something that we need to address immediately.
Theo, before you leave, so what were the other two questions that you turned down?
Are U.S. and European sanctions having an impact on the Russian economy? And will recent protests spur efforts to combat global climate change?
Okay. And so, what made you pick the one you did?
Well, Ebola is a really large issue right now, and when you're doing something like Extem, it's really important to have some sort of evidence to back up what you're saying. You're making these claims, but why are you making these claims? What in the modern world right now shows that what you're saying is actually valid? And I felt that focusing on the issue of Ebola was something that I would have the literature on necessary to really articulate an argument, specifically as to why I believe Ebola is not going to become an epidemic. And there is, more literature on things in terms of the Russian economy or these other sanctions. But Ebola is a major issue right now, and I felt that focusing on that would be important.
Other questions?
So is this the area of speech and debate that you concentrate on all the time, or do you do?
I do different things as well. I do policy debate, which Mr. Maier coaches. I do Extem. I also do congressional debate, as well as occasionally impromptu. Which, I don't know, you want to talk about those? Or
We talked about them a little bit, yeah.
Nice job.
So we currently have about 35 students in the program. We have 3 coaches. But a lot of what I've done is really just to try to continue on the legacy of the person who founded the program, and that was Dr. Randy Pausch. He founded the program back in 1995 when the head of school asked, during the interview process, if he would help put this sort of team together. And over the course of the next 15 years, he proceeded to work tirelessly at developing not just the St. Andrews team, but also his expertise in this activity. And to that end, he ultimately served as the district chair for the Mississippi Forensic League. He served as the state liaison for speech and debate for the Mississippi High School Activities Association, has worked in the tab room at national tournaments, and was just this past June recognized for all of that work and for all of those accomplishments when he was inducted into the National Speech and Debate Hall of Fame in June of 2014, becoming the second Mississippian to do so. So at this point, we have a wonderful program here at St. Andrews. Love for you to hear more about it. If you are interested, feel free to contact me or either one of the 2 associate coaches, and that would be Jarek Shields or Ruthie Taylor. So if there are no other questions, thank you very much.